Welcome to Vendetta Sports Media. This is Eight Sided Freaks, and today we are here to recap UFC 317. No preview last week. That was purely some technical issues on my end, but we are here to recap the card. Hopefully, for anyone who was looking to catch the preview, we obviously have the articles up, so you can get plenty of our thoughts from that as well. But for today, we are recapping the card. Obviously, the five main card fights, so um, the five topics for discussion today. Then we'll hit some final thoughts on the end of the card. Ended up being a great night of fights, lots of finishes, fight of the year contender, some other really good fights. So a lot of action, a lot to talk about. So we'll get right to it. Main event: Ilia Topuria becomes a two division champion. He knocks out Charles Oliveira in the opening round. Jerry, we can throw it over to you first. What did you make of Topuria's performance and him getting that second belt?
Honestly, not surprising. I think we talked about it on the preview show we did do. We talked about this is the most likely outcome. Charles Oliveira has such a suspect chin. Ilia Topuria has such good power, and it really showed that his power has transitioned incredibly well from 145 to 155. Landed a couple shots, couple shots in, and Oliveira was already bleeding. I will say Oliveira landed that nice elbow, and it didn't look like it did a thing to Topuria. So if he has an iron chin as well as all the power, lightweight division, look out. But great performance by the Georgian Spaniard, and to be expected. He's the better fighter. He's a younger fighter, and he wanted it more. He even looked to the press conference or the face off whenever he had it. He was like, I'm sorry, it has to be you. I've already won this fight.
Yeah. A level of confidence that I don't think a normal human being should have. It's actually very scary, but I agree. Amazing performance. One that is, I mean, I guess I could say it's capping off an all-time three-fight run, but who knows how long this run can continue for, genuinely. So I I know I was saying in the preview too, felt like you just had to have a little bit more concern because it's Charles Oliveira and most finishes, most submissions, going up a weight class, but um, like you said, just got him out of there in the first round and looked great while doing it. So Topuria is, I think, is truly, and I saw he got the nod for the number one pound for pound ranking too. So I think we kind of all already had him there, I think, but yeah, it's good to see.
Yeah, I had him as number one pound for pound in my opinion and hypothetical ranking if I did have one. After that Max Holloway fight, I thought that was a very impressive fight. And then he goes and does this off the back of that. Think establishes him as number one pound for pound even more so. And he did good in the grappling as well here. Obviously, he had to defend that heel hook, but Charles got double unders, wasn't able to get a takedown. There was a throw attempt. I believe Charles initiated that. Ilia flips the hips, gets in top position, works the crucifix, but he kind of got greedy there, loses the position, which I don't really. I'm never gonna dock Ilia for losing position from top just because kind of feels like he can just take as many risks as he want, and if the guy stands up, it's like okay, now we're striking, so that's fine with him. So I think I'm not gonna care too much about that, but yeah, and the power was there, obviously, like you mentioned, Jerry. I think it was a couple jabs and some early exchanges. It didn't take much, and that Oliveira eye was pretty busted up. Obviously, the right hand at the end finishes the fight. The left hand kind of lands behind it, but not as nearly as impactful as that right hand. So, thought it was a great performance from Ilia, even if Oliveira is kind of a easy matchup for him per se. I think Ilia still did well considering there were some grappling exchanges in here. I think that makes it look even better for him than if he would have, knocked him out in that first exchange. We all knew he could knock him out, but I think it speaks a little bit more when he's doing some solid things in the grappling as well for when you're looking at like a long term outlook or looking even short term, if we'll talk about matchups in a little bit, but if he's booked with Armin or Patty, some of those grappling exchanges you do like to see prior to a fight with one of those guys. So I was impressed. Long story short, very impressed with Topuria, as has been the result pretty much every time he's fought. for a very long time. You watch it and you go, oh yeah, he looks pretty good, because he is pretty damn good. So after the fight, we get the face off with Paddy Pimblett. So when you're looking at what's next for Ilia, does that Paddy Pimblett matchup move the needle for you guys, or is there a different name that you find more interesting? Anthony, we can give it to you first on this.
It moves the needle for me in the sense of, I mean, I think that'd be a fantastic fight week and everything, and I think that's probably one of the biggest ones you could put on in the sport. Just with the fans that both fighters have and everything, and just I think the amount of online traction and stuff on YouTube or posts that both fighters get. But if I were to criticize Islam, or not criticize him, but I felt like he left fights on the table before he moved up, and Arman was one of them. So I always thought Arman should have had the title shot. Now, I know I got outruled by Dana, apparently, because he, missed weight or had that back injury. It seems like a bit more cloudy now. Now they're saying he missed weight, or he pulled out because of weight-cutting concerns. But so I still think that Arman fight needs to happen. I still think there's a chance Arman could be the best fighter in this division, even when Islam was there. Like, I think Arman could be champion. So I still want that fight. But when it comes to making the biggest, everyone's, whether that be pay-per-view sales, all that stuff, not that we get to see those numbers, but when it comes to that, I would be happy with a Paddy fight. But then I also heard maybe it could be Paddy Gaethje and stuff first, so I don't know where everything's going, but I think you have Ilia as the A side regardless, and you can't really go wrong. Paddy would be more of the maybe fun, entertaining, all the other stuff matchup. I think Arman could be the best fight there, though.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much put it perfectly there. Entertainment value, Paddy is the good way to go. They're trying, I mean, you saw Joe Rogan bring him into the octagon. There was no, in my opinion, no need to bring Paddy into the cage. The shove by Ilia, them, all the trash talking. That's what builds a fight for entertainment value. If they go into the cage together, I don't think Paddy lasts much longer than Oliveira. Personally, might have a slightly better chin at this point because he is a lot younger, but I still think Ilia would get him out in the first round, if not early second round then. But as you said, Anthony, the entertainment value, the press conference, all the trash talk, fight week, the weeks leading up to fight week would be just pure cinema, pure entertainment. And that's sometimes the UFC's mistake, in my opinion, is you go for what's more publicized, what's going to bring in more pay-per-views, what's going to make people want to watch more. And I think that would be the Paddy fight. I think the Arman fight's the way to go, though. Arman, for whatever happened, as you said, it's hazy. We don't know if it was weight issues, back issues. He is the number one contender in this division. He should get a title fight, whether it's now. And if he gets skipped, I don't know what to say to him. Like, how do you have the number one title shot? The guy who you beat just got smacked about by Topuria, and now you're kind of sitting out after 3 straight lightweight championship fights. It's a little unnecessary, a little unfair, and otherwise, I mean, Paddy moved down 2 spots in the rankings. Everyone else kind of moved down 1 because Ilia came out of nowhere, from nowhere on the rankings and won it. But Paddy dropped below Beneil Dariush, which we'll get into later. So I don't know why if the UFC would want to do a champion versus number 10 ranked fighter. I think that's a little extreme, especially, I mean, you got guys like Sarukian, maybe Gaethje. I don't know if I really need to see Ilia and Max Holloway fight again. I don't know about Ilia and Dustin. I think Dustin's probably done. Then you go into the Dan Hookers, Mateus Gamrots. Those aren't championship fighters at the moment. I think the only answer is Arman, unless for some reason Islam gets told by the UFC and Dana and Hunter, we want you to fight Ilia instead of fighting JDM, which at that point this whole vacant belt would have been meaningless. But that's another one that I'd entertain.
Yeah, so I mean, I have a lot of the similar thoughts as you guys here because I look at the 3 names and the UFC made it very clear after the fight, like the 3 guys we're even considering are Arman, Gaethje, and Paddy because they flashed them all on the screen and showed their reactions. They made it very clear who could have potentially got a title fight because they gave them all the screen time there. And then you you see the Patty face off, and personally, I was like, well, I guess that's the fight then. I didn't really think that'd be the case. I thought they would want to see one more from Patty, and I think a lot of people have that reaction as well. Um, so I was a little confused. And then Dana does a press conference, his post-fight press conference, saying, "Well, I didn't like the Patty and Ilia thing, this and that." And then they ask him about Armin, and he says, well, when it comes to the Armin fight, Armin missed weight the last time he tried to fight for a title. And being the backup, doesn't get you back in our good graces, but it's a step in the right direction. And they ask him about Gaethje, and he says, well, that guy threatened retirement on us. That's a little wacky, don't you think? And I'm sitting here going, who the fuck is going to fight for the title? Those are the three guys, doesn't sound like you're happy with any of them. And maybe they just book one and, like, that's it is what it is. Maybe Patty gets to skip the line because of I do think it has the most online traction, and I think for better or worse would be one of the fights that you can make in terms of online, publicity. But then I also look at that and I go, well, would they have him fight again, Patty? Well, now we're getting into dicey territory of who does he beat in the top 5 to ensure we're getting a shot. Because, for example, if I were the UFC and wanted Patty fighting for a title, I wouldn't want to do a Patty versus Armin and give Gaethje the title fight, for example. Wouldn't be very confident Patty beats Armin. So it's like no matter how you split him up, and maybe he can beat Gaethje, but like I wouldn't be, if I had $1 million on the line, I wouldn't be counting my money that he's going to go get that job done. So I think there's a lot of ifs and buts here. I'd be interested to see if one of these guys, or well, it would have to be two of them. If two of them are willing to fight before, and like get booked right now in order to skip the other one, because if two of these guys fight and beat one of the other two, they would then jump the third guy who just sat out. If that makes sense, as long as logistics line up for a date and so forth. So I'm interested to see if that happens, but I would have to agree that I think that Armin is by far the most competitive fight, even though I do think Ilia wins. I think Ilia wipes the floor with Gaethje. I think he knocks him out silly. And I think Ilia wipes the floor with Patty. The one thing I do think I haven't spoke much about Gaethje. The one thing I think Gaethje has going for him is Ilia right now is on a Legends tour, taking out legends, and I don't think Gaethje has the accolades of any of the other three guys that Ilia just fought. In fact, he's the only one without an undisputed title. But I think maybe you could sell that as him taking out another legend, even if Gaethje doesn't have quite the career as those three guys, undisputed champs, defended the titles, for example. So I wonder if that's the angle. But long story short, I don't know who they're going to book him with, and Armin's probably the most deserving, even if he pulled out of the last one. There's just a lot of unclearness here for me. And last thing I'll add here, I've been rambling here for a second, but only other outcome I see is if Islam loses to JDM, decides he wants to go back down to 55. I think that's a decent possibility. But then you're running a couple of ifs of if he loses, and then does he stay at 155, 170? I think that may be the route we get that Islam fight, but I think that would be not the next one. For example, I think that would have to be, Ilia defends one, and then that whole scenario shakes out at 170. And then, like I said, you're still running ifs. I wouldn't be counting on that for long-term planning.
Well, yeah, I think it's funny. I just looked up out of curiosity on YouTube what the viewership numbers were for that Patty and Ilia thing, that face-off. It's already around 3 million after 4 days. So
pretty big number.
That's a pretty big number for the UFC to be like, we could turn this into something special. Like you said, I think Patty gets battered in that fight, but
I did see that that Holloway knockout over Gaethje, like over the year, and the views that accumulated over the year, that Topuria's knockout of Oliveira beat that in like one night or whatever, which is insane, or one day. But I think Armin should get the shot, or my ideal situation of I think would be the most fair, because I do think Armin's still the most deserving, is Armin gets the shot, and then I don't think Patty should get a title shot of beating Chandler. And I think Gaethje honestly needs another one as much as he really thinks he should fight for the title. So Armin fights, and then you do the number one contender match between Gaethje and Patty. And then after that fight, the winner of that one gets the next shot. And then the last thing I could see, the most unfortunate situation would be they give Patty the title shot. Ilia beats Patty. Islam loses to JDM. Islam comes back down, then gets the fight against Ilia, and Arman gets jumped again a second time. I can see that happening. And there's a scenario I think that happens, and that's probably just because Dana hates Arman. But that would be, while I think that would be a little bit funny, that would be awful.
Yeah, I think the wildest possible situation would be because Ilia has already said he wants to fight Islam, whether it's at 155 or 170. What are the chances that say he does fight Arman or fights Patty, beats him, and Islam beats JDM? What are the odds that like Ilia tries to go up to 170 and leaving this division in a complete shit show again?
I think he's going to chase him. It's a matter of, is that a year from now, how many title defenses away is that for both guys? That would be like, do we make Islam beat JDM and then we're instantly engaging it, or do we make Islam beat JDM and then maybe
Sean Brady?
Sean Brady, yep. Do we have him take out another guy after that? Do we have Ilia defend 1-2 times? I think that's the argument you start getting there, but I think he's chasing him right up to 170.
Yeah. I mean, that screws both divisions to an aspect. Like 155, you got these guys who are aging out a bit, and like that's less so. But 170, you have Sean Brady, obviously. We still are waiting on Shavkat Rakhmonov to come back, who arguably is probably the best fighter in that division all around. Then you also have Ian Gary, Michael Morales. Joaquin Buckley took a step back, but so less him, but Kamaru Usman's making a rush forward again. That would take this welterweight division out of play for such a long time if Islam wins and they're like, oh, let's do Ilia. But again, sales. It's a business, so I wouldn't be surprised. But
that'd suck considering, like, that'd be a legendary fight, but like 170 has been at the best spot it has been in for years in terms of contenders. Like Usman was fighting the same guys over and over again because you couldn't find anybody else to throw in there. So
I also, last thing, I think that would be such an interesting look on legacy-wise, because I do like the little school of thought of you got to get a title defense. It really stamps yourself as a champion. And what an interesting of kind of just winning the belt and maybe fighting once, or winning the belt and maybe not even, fighting once or twice and then jumping up again. That would be the third, belt he would hold, which would be the first time. So, I mean, there's something in that own right, but really never, not necessarily clearing out a division, but not really stacking up defenses would be such an interesting way to look at legacy when some of the other GOATs are people that have defended their belt a multitude of times, and that's why they are looked at so in such, awe and admiration.
That was going to be another.
Go ahead, Jerry.
No, you go ahead.
I think the one thing that Ilia would have going for him in that scenario is the names are really impressive. To me, those guys that he's beating, kind of, not to say they count for 4 defenses. I don't know how you would equate that math, but taking out some guys who are really impressive wins. And then if he were to get like an Arman, for example, say that was his only title defense, that would look really good as like the number one guy at that time who hadn't broken through to win the championship. You take him out, like he could get some really impressive names to where it kind of makes up for, you know what I mean? Like, who gives a fuck about defending the belt against Renato Moicano? Like, respectfully, I don't count that one as much. I just saw what Beneil Dariush did to the guy. So, like, kind of takes some spice out.
Yeah, I had kind of a pair of questions. One was like, if Ilia, and this one's a hypothetical, the other one's a little more like I've seen it trending and stuff, but Ilia does go up to 170. Just say, for example, say he defends the belt or doesn't even defend it. Islam wins. He goes up and beats Islam. Is he what? He's got to be at least top 3, top 4 fighters, would you say? Or just based on like the guys who he would have beaten and in the way he's done it?
If he does that, you're saying if he goes up and beats Islam?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he has to be. I think already I had this conversation, and I saw it on Twitter a little bit too, but I mean, his resume in Khabib's already.
My other question was, what do you think of Khabib?
Yeah, so people already have a Khabib as like an arguable 5th or 4th, and maybe he's the 6, 7, 8 range. And Topuria is like resume is already up there with him right now. So, but to be fair, Khabib did retire prime too a little bit. He could have had a couple more fights too, but I was going to say though, Topuria's trajectory, you would still have to say it's probably going to go way higher than that as of right now. So, but yeah, I would put him there if he were to do that. I would put him probably top 3, and he wouldn't be 3. So.
Yeah, it'd be really impressive. He would be the only guy in that scenario, triple weight champion. It'd be a tough one, but I feel like you wouldn't be able to short him at that point. Like, and especially when you talk about if you put any account into the actual eye tests and things you're looking at and like skill in there, like that's a whole because the second you take away just resume and start to use the eye test and be like, who's actually the more skilled fighter, that's when he really begins to like take some precedent over some of these other guys in terms of pure eye test. And hell, like Volkanovski may not be in his prime, but Volkanovski's like borderline top 10 guy. Holloway's probably a top 15 guy. Oliveira, top 15, top 20. Like, I don't have a list that I've written out, but like he's taking out guys who he's not taking out slouches at this point.
No. Yeah, I mean, I'm completely with you. It's like, I think if he goes up and wins a 3rd belt, I don't think he's quite there just based on, or like not the GOAT, just based on title defenses. But it's hard to deny someone who goes and does that. If it was, say he doesn't fight Arman and just goes up and beats Islam, greatest 4-fight win streak of all time.
Yeah, for sure. Last question I want to ask is 2 guys who didn't talk about, Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier. I think we're all going to be in the same spot as far as Max Holloway goes. Like, in my eyes, he's got to make himself inevitable like he did with the Volkanovski trilogy. Like, he's really got to put a stamp that, like, there's no one better than him at 55, and he needs that fight against Ilia. Like, he'd have to win not just Dustin, another one after Dustin, and maybe another one after that. I think it's a long road for Holloway, so I want to get your guys' take on that first. And then second, if Dustin somehow manages to beat Holloway, would you give him a title fight if he wants to stick around? And one more, if he says the only fight I want is title fight since I beat Holloway, would you be okay with him getting that shot and not retiring in a couple weeks' time? Jerry, lead us off on that one.
Start with the Max Holloway. Like, yeah, he has to beat Poirier. He also has to beat one of, if not 2 of, Gaethje, Oliveira, and Arman. That's the only way I could see him warranting one, just on the prowess of how badly he got beat by Ilia. It wasn't like it was a decision that went his wrong way. He got knocked out cold. And that was the first time we've ever seen Max Holloway knocked out at all. So I think he has some stuff to push. And it's also at the same time, like we've talked about, Gaethje and Arman, we've already talked about as title contenders, possible next. You have to do something really impressive to jump those 2 guys. Who knows? Maybe Ilia beats one of them, beats 2 of them. Then it's like, okay, he's already wiped out the division. Then we get something similar to what was happening. You already brought up Kamaru Usman. Something similar there. It's like, all right, who's the next guy who I haven't fought in this division for a title? Might as well. As far as Poirier goes, I'd rather, if he says it's his last fight, which he's been saying this Holloway one is, I don't know how he warrants a title shot after, unless he goes out and knocks out Max quicker than Ilia did. He finishes Max quicker in one way or another. I don't think he warrants a necessary title fight. I'm not opposed to it, but I also think he goes... personally, I don't think anyone in this division, maybe Arman, can beat Ilia, because Poirier is a boxer. We've seen what happens to other boxers who Ilia's fought.
Poirier gets knocked the fuck out, but we're just trying to figure out if they're going to give him the fight.
Well, I mean, depends on how he beats him, I think, is my final say.
Yeah. I wouldn't be totally opposed to Max just because we've seen him before when he continues to clear out divisions. I don't know. Like, I think he would have to win 2 or 3 fights. And I don't know if Ilia would be there for 2 or 3 fights down the road. So that would be my thing. But But if he were to beat 2 or 3 people and he's the best opponent there, the number one dude, I get it. To the Poirier wouldn't make sense to me just because then Gaethje should get the shot over him in my opinion because Gaethje beat him. So if you're kind of like if both of them are reached to maybe get one last title shot, I think you would have to go Gaethje because Gaethje would have had it first if he didn't take that Max fight. To me, so that's kind of where I look at that one.
That makes sense to me. I'm just saying this now because I think if Poirier wins, I think there will be a big collection of this talk, if that makes sense. I think if Poirier wins, I think there's going to be a large amount. I think he might call for it, and I think there's going to be a large amount of online, requests that he sticks around for one more and fights for the title. So that's why I posed the question. I'd like to see Max knock him out and Poirier retire. That's just my personal opinion. But as far as what could happen if Poirier wins, I think that's a legit possibility.
Just one more thing on this site. Does it go any different? Because we know, obviously, Ilia's power is what's advertised, but there's a long period of time before his UFC where he's a submission artist. Does it go any different than Poirier's title attempts against Islam and Khabib?
Yeah, I think he gets knocked out. I think that's the only difference.
Yes,
I think Poirier would think that he wouldn't he'd be like, it's a boxer. I'm the best boxer in the UFC. I'm bigger. And then he'd go out there and get knocked out. But I think if Ilia wanted to submit him, he probably could.
Yeah. Do you think Ilia's the best boxer in the UFC then?
Yeah. I think so.
Hard to argue with that.
Yeah. All right. Swinging it down to the co-main event, Alexandre Pantoja versus Kai Kara-France. Pantoja, some really good grappling here, as we've come to expect. He gets the submission in the third round, rear naked choke. Too bad the preview episode is lost in the ether because talked a lot about the back takes and Pantoja giving the back and potentially getting submitted in that, or Kai Kara-France giving the back and getting submitted in that one. So we were pretty on point there. But still impressive performance from Pantoja, who wins the belt at 35 years old. That one's starting to get a little dispelled here. I still think over the course of time, the 35-year-olds won't come on top of that one. But we got a couple guys proving that it's not the end of the world. The second you're 35 years old, and Pantoja is one of those guys. Anthony, it's your turn to lead us off here. What did you make of Pantoja's fourth title defense, which is the most of any active men's champion? Only champion with more is Weili Zhang at women's strawweight.
I thought it was great. I thought we kind of nailed the pick there. I understood the Kai Kara being live for, because everyone's had the puncher's chance is kind of what you're banking on against Pantoja. And Kai Kara actually definitively had the power to where it was like a legit puncher's chance, not like a volume. You're probably going to have to clip him multiple times. But I thought, while I understand he had good takedown defense, I still thought Pantoja was going to be too much. That's why when you added this specific way Kai Kara gets out of rear naked chokes, or when someone takes his back, or the fact that he gives up his back was going to be a huge red flag. I thought it all came together for Pantoja in this one. I love how he immediately started ripping to the body to start the fight with the leg or the body kicks and stuff. You saw some of the pressure. You saw a little bit, the durability, the gas. Never really got too concerned because that fight didn't get to 4 and 5, but I thought it was a pretty perfect fight for him. He had his game plan and executed in every facet, I thought, and then got the sub.
Yeah, I mean, the way he came out of that fight, going straight to the body, and then kind of leaving himself a little exposed, so Kai Kara-France starts to go and try and throw some shots, immediately picks him up, takes him down, and that's how the rest of the first round went. There's levels to this game, and as much as I know a lot of people hate Kara-France as a fighter, I always thought he was kind of entertaining, and he got his ass whooped. He is not championship material. Pantoja's showing why he has the most defenses as a male fighter at the moment. It's just another class act of just, he knows how to take him down, and he knows you can hold him there because you're not getting back up. I do think the biggest thing that surprised me was when Kai Kara-France was looking for takedowns. I think You're already getting destroyed on the ground. Why are you trying to put yourself in that bad position anyway? You're already giving him an advantage by doing that. And I think at that point, Pantoja knew, oh yeah, this guy's nowhere near ready for this, so let's finish him off.
Yeah, I think Pantoja did a lot of really great work here. And the thing that surprised me most was that the takedowns were pretty easy. Um, Kai's got his grappling flaws, but he has done really well defending takedowns in the past. Pantoja got the takedowns easy, and then just lightning quick back takes. He might be the best back taker in the sport, in the history of the sport, I should say. It's kind of a tough list to go make, but I mean, I wouldn't comfortably say anyone's better at him than taking the back and threatening a rear naked choke. And I was surprised Car France got out of the first one in the first round, but round 3 and Kai wasn't giving up in there. Sometimes guys get the rear naked choke and they're I'm not getting out of this. Just I'm gonna tap and be on my day. But fighting hands to the very end. Pantoja adjusting grips, adjusting where the arm is, constantly getting in deeper, and that slowly turns into him getting the rear naked choke. So incredible work from Pantoja. Great performance. Moves himself up the pound for pound rankings, which I know is a big goal of his. He moved up 5 spots in those rankings. So, or 4 or 5 spots. I think he's at the 5 spot now. So Pantoja has done great work and done great work as a champion. We don't even need to talk about who's next because we're going to talk about Royval and Joshua Van in a second. And Van is getting that title shot next, so we don't even have to have the conversation. So is there anything else that you guys want to close out with on the Pantoja side of things before we swing it down to the featured fight?
The only thing, I mean, I'm glad. I thought he showed another great account of himself, and I'm hoping he's raising the ranks of some other people's minds, specifically even casual fans that, I'm sure there was a big pay-per-view where they got their eyes on it. So to see a flyweight do that, and the fight we're about to talk about too, I know I had a couple friends and people at the bar that I was like letting them know, I was like, this, could be fight of the year contender right here. Watch it, and then they were blown away by it. So the last thing too is I would say how upfront and willing he was already to be like, okay, I'm ready for Van too. Like, very active champion too. That's what you want, and looking for the challenge, not like dodging and going for the easiest fights too. I would say so. That's always what you want to see from a champion.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm going to bounce right off of that. There was talks even coming into this fight of, or when are we doing the Merab and Pantoja super fight? The fact that Pantoja, he's doing it the right way. Whereas Islam, he left a lot of fights on the table. Ilia left fights at featherweight on the table. Pantoja's making sure there is not a single person questioning his ability at flyweight. He will fight. Seems like he'll fight anybody, anywhere, anytime. Will likely beat him. So he's not rushing up to go fight Merab. Do I think that would be a very fun fight? Yes. But I love that he's just like, no, Joshua Van, let's do it. You got next. Screw the move up. I'm going to clear out this division and then I'll move myself up.
Yeah, and Merab is doing the same thing at 35. Merab takes a lot of pride in cleaning out 35, and there's still guys for Merab to beat like Sandhagen, and we'll see what happens after the Sandhagen fight. But right now, Merab is very content at trying to rack up defenses at 135, which I really appreciate. And Pantoja's doing the same thing at 125. And to me, that is great for the division. Like, let's really try and have another great champion here. Let's keep this division active. And these guys at flyweight tend to be really active. Van has been one of the most active fighters in the sport. That's going to have to slow down now that he's fighting for championships. It just closes the window of when you could fight. You only get the pay-per-view dates, and, the UFC is only going to want the flyweights at certain dates because, you're going to use them as a co-main. Probably, I assume they're using this as a co-main. Just with some of the fights we've got lined up the rest of this year, and that's fine. Like, I like flyweight co-mains. I think it's a great way to get eyes on the flyweights, and I'd rather have flyweight co-mains than like a shitty co-main that pisses me off. Like, give me a flyweight title fight, and I'm gonna enjoy it. So I don't mind that at all, and I think it gets eyes on the division. and then maybe we get some big enough fights where eventually we're main eventing with the flyweights. But at this point in time, completely content with the flyweight co-main title fights. And yeah, so I really like what Pantoja's doing, and I hope some of these other prospects at 125 start to win some fights. Like, I think the worst case scenario for Pantoja is where we're getting the Royval, Moreno, Kaka France rotation of no one can beat these guys. I think that's the only bad outcome for him here. But like guys like Van breaking through and getting to that title fight is massive for him, having some parity at the top there. And as much as I like the guys I listed, it would be nice if we could get some prospects in there to make sure Pantoja had fresh matchups.
Yeah, and I just one more thing to say on the flyweight division as a whole and as far as the co-main goes, flyweight fights at the moment are so fast, so many shots are being thrown, and if it's not, it's crazy amount of takedowns. It's just nonstop action. That is the perfect co-main event for any division. I think this is the perfect division for a co-main because of how active, how aggressive, how quick these fighters are. Where give me a flyweight co-main for a heavyweight title fight, anything like that, because it'll get the crowd going, get the atmosphere going. Everyone will be more excited, and then you go out and put whatever it is in the main event, and people will still be going crazy from that co-main.
Yep, unless it's an Amir Albazi fight.
Yeah, does he have a fight scheduled?
Well, he might. I think he's fighting Tyra.
Okay.
I believe that is. I'd have to double check that. I believe he's fighting.
He's fighting Tyra. We'll see if that actually happens. We should have Amir Albazi versus Manel Kape and see who pulls out first.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. The odds of that one happening is plus 7,000 at the moment. All right, moving down to the other flyweight fight on the main card, Brandon Royval versus Joshua Van. We had records for significant strikes thrown and landed here. I have to pull up all the records, but it was a lengthy list. I think it broke some divisional records. I think it broke some 3-round records, potentially some records, period. So absolutely absurd fight. Outstanding performance from both guys. Throw in a ton of strikes. Both guys landed north of 200 strikes while throwing north of 400. Royval threw north of 400. I think Van might have been around there. He might have been a little bit lower. I'd have to double check. 311. Van led it at a very high clip was the difference in this one, which that's kind of Royval's style. Royval has always been a guy who could care less about the percentage he's landing at because he kind of uses his offense as a defense, like going to show you the jab and going to show you those long weapons. So I never really get too upset when I see a low percentage from Royval. Van's the complete opposite. High percentage guy with power as well. And I think that was the difference here. Van landed with a little bit more power early. Royval really turned the tides in round 2. Round 3 was really close, and I think the judges really got bailed out by that last second knockdown, by Josh Van. And credit to Josh Van more than anything for putting a stamp on that performance, because that's exactly what you need to do there. Wasn't content, got the knockdown with 5 seconds left, won him the round 100%, and won him the fight 100%. So that's not to say he wouldn't have won it otherwise. He already had won. He got 130-27, so he would have needed one of the other 2 judges to score him round 3, which that was close in my mind. And he started to turn the tide there. I think his last minute of that round might have been the best portion of that round for him, if I remember correctly. So for him, I like his odds of getting one of those last 3 on the judges' scorecards. But point being, he went out there and took it out of the judges' hands. So credit to him for that.
I do. Before we hop in, I do have a list of like the flyweight records that these two set.
Go for it. And then when you list off the records, go ahead and give your opinion, because that's what I was going to ask you next.
Fair enough. So significant strikes landed. They landed 419, the previous record, which is a weird one. Arla Quelling and Jeff Molina landed 305. So it's over 114 more significant strikes landed. Attempted, Moreno and Royval had 721. These two had 772. So shattered that by 51.
Total. That was a 5-round fight.
I was going to say that could be a 3-round, though. Okay.
Yep. I mean, could you imagine the numbers these guys would have been putting up in a 5-round fight? This is why on the episode last week we were like,
We said that too.
beat us a 5-round fight of this, and no one would complain. The other two total strikes landed. They finished with 425. When Pantoja and Royval fought, which that also might have been a 5-round fight, they had 407. And then total strikes attempted 779. Just beat out Moreno and Royval, which was a 5-round fight, by 4 shots, by 4 total strikes attempted. They had 775. Royval and Van finished with 779. That explains it right there. This fight was awesome. This was no doubt fight of the night. I think it might have been fight of the year. I was even texting with a friend and even may have said to you guys, this has the potential of being a Hall of Fame fight down the line. This was just awesome. 2 guys. And we talked about how Royval has that ground advantage. Maybe he goes to a takedown to help himself out here and there. No, screw that. We're going to stand in front of each other for 15 minutes and just throw as hard and as fast as we can. And Royval got out to a good start. Van bounced back in that first round, and it was just back and forth the entire fight. As the commentator said, good luck to whoever had to score that fight. If it wasn't for the knockdown, could have seen a draw potentially.
That's what I did. Okay, that makes me feel better because I did have Royval, and I left $200 on 2 different parlays on the table right there with the Van decision, but I had it 1-1 for sure going into the third. And I didn't know if it was me. I was maybe a little biased thinking Royval could have had it in that third until that knockdown for sure. But he was actually, like James was kind of saying, that last 30 seconds to a minute, it was kind of snowballing a little bit for him. So I definitely would have saw a Van decision. Could have been 2-1.
He started throwing those like oblique kicks and those kicks to the front that had Royval falling down. Great adjustment, by the way, because it was forward pressure all night. But the second he started throwing those, I think Royval might have been winning prior to those, and I think Van maybe stole it after when he started throwing those before even getting that knockdown. It was close prior to the knockdown period.
100%. That's what I was saying. I think that was one of the better live adjustments I've seen a fighter do in a while. And that wasn't even, he didn't even get 5 rounds. He made that adjustment quick in the third, which I thought was amazing. I will say, while it was, like we're saying, possible Hall of Fame fight of the year contender, I do think Royval handicapped himself a little bit, as in he fought the perfect style for Van. Like, he fought Van's fight and arguably still almost won, which shows how good Royval is. But I genuinely would have liked to see a takedown or something. I know he was working the knee a little bit. I think 2 landed clean, but also when he was continually going to that knee, he was just leaving himself open for hooks nonstop on Van. But overall, I thought it was great both ways. Like, that's what I'm saying. It's tough. I mean, someone has to lose a fight. Both of their stocks went way up, even though Royval lost, and he's probably, it's going to be even further from a title shot for him. But I would imagine the amount of fans and excitement that he got from that. And then Van, speaking of how frequently he's fought 6 times in this last calendar year. So now all this hard work, and we always say it's a risk going up and taking fights short notice. Well, this is the reason some people do it right there. And Van is now sitting pretty for a title shot next fight. And so I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and as well on the Royval side, like, I think his stock is up. I was going to say he probably just, like, is always going to be a pay-per-view guy, but then the alternative is, like, Royval has such good cardio where, like, why would you – it's kind of handicapping yourself when you agree to fight on a pay-per-view main card, even though that's, like, a big opportunity. Like, 5 rounds is – the last 2 rounds are always going to be an advantage for him unless maybe he's fighting Josh Van in terms of pure cardio. Like, it's really tough for him to give those up. He's just one of those guys. But otherwise, like, throw Royval in some flyweight main events on some of these fight nights, and they've done that in the past. They've done it. His last 2 fights were flyweight main events on fight night. So I think that trend continues, even though he's coming off a loss here. And Van obviously will be fighting for the title. We got that face off. Van looked a little. I don't know if he was scared or if he felt awkward. Like, I can imagine how that's an awkward experience there, but looked a little wishy-washy for him in there when he was facing off with Pantoja. But maybe that's not the case come fight week when they actually fight.
I will say he also just came off a 15-minute war.
Yeah, probably had a headache. He
Yeah,
gotta go
Yeah,
sit
for
in the
sure.
lights.
if he's getting hit 219 times, plus all the ones that kind of grazed him, you're gonna.
The,
I was shocked that he was out there so quickly.
that's what threw
He
me
was
off too.
first round. He
Yeah.
was already out there ready to watch.
He might
I
not have
like.
went, or he had some clothes on, so he probably just went and changed and ran right back out.
I don't know. I mean, because obviously I know it's happened throughout, but the UFC's really milking this. Like, almost, do we need one for every single fight for the dude to hop in the octagon? I don't know if they're just getting a lot of clicks on those type of videos or something, or they know it's a whole nother video or post they can make across all platforms. But does everything to happen every single fight? We need the face off thing, because I did think I thought it was cool. I was like, oh, he's back out there ready to watch like the couple main events. That's dope. And then now I'm thinking of like, oh, did they ask him to come back just so they could do the face off? Was maybe one of my thoughts. But I do think, yeah, he's, if you watch any of his interviews or when he is a pretty confident guy too, and not full of himself, but that the little cockiness he has to him. So it might not have been more scared or hesitancy. It's probably, yeah, his head was hurting from the lights and stuff.
But I mean, like that one, I feel was more necessary than Patty and.
I agree. I 100% agree with that. I'm not mad at that Van one. I just think I feel like we're seeing it almost every time now.
That Van one would have been cooler if we hadn't seen 6 other pointless ones. Is kind of the like that was still cool, but like if you don't see the like some of the other ones, like I think it was Bilal was in there once, and it's like or tried to go in there, and we had Kayla and Amanda recently, and all the there's just been a lot of these. It's like all right, we can slow down on some of these. I do think it played out perfectly as well for the UFC. You had fight of the year, and then flyweight title fight. They tell you the 2 guys you just watched in entertaining fights are going to fight each other, and there were a lot of eyes on that pay-per-view just on pure terms of Charles Oliveira main event against Ilia Topuria.
Yeah.
Like there was a lot of eyes on those final 3 fights for sure, and just the conflict resolution of this is a number 1 contender fight. This is a title fight. Now these 2 guys are going to fight. Here's our lightweight title. Like I think that all played pretty perfectly for the UFC, and that's why Royval wanted to stay on that card when Cop pulled out. So he was on to something there.
I do think last thing too, but that's just real quick. And like we say, when you're making especially if it's a co-main too, or main event in general, when there's a belt fight, put the title contender fight right under it. It's a clear, perfect formula, literally. And then obviously you get lucky when it is a fight of the year contender. That tends to help, but it's not like UFC. It's not that hard to do certain things right, and I feel like it's been worth it a lot more than it hasn't when they do that specific style of booking the main card out.
I agree. All right, moving down the card, Renato Moicano versus Beneil Dariush. Boy, did Beneil Dariush absolutely cook Renato Moicano. Kind of thought it was a dog shit performance from Moicano, if I'm being completely honest. But Beneil Dariush, a lot of great work there, great kicks. We talked a lot in the preview show that is now not coming out about who's the better grappler. Well, we got our answer. Beneil Dariush landed takedowns, spent time in top position, clearly had the more functional grappling game, wore down Moicano, and did a lot of great work, overcame an early knockout. The durability was a concern, and boy, did he get rocked, but he did not get finished. Wins the last 2 rounds after getting dropped in the first, and it is a Beneil Dariush victory after 18 months out of the octagon. Anthony, take it away on Beneil Dariush's performance against Renato Moicano.
I thought it was a great fight. Kind of how I thought it was going to go. Moicano's a fraud, but at the same time, that fight is also you're a couple seconds away or 2 different punches away from Beneil getting knocked out in the first, and that was the other big concern. The only reason why I didn't want to take him. So it's so crazy how that's how I thought that fight should play out, because I think Beneil Dariush, you can't take him down. He's literally one of the best defensive wrestlers. I did like his wrestling style a little bit more. You get to see. I thought his striking's better too, but the things were concerns were his age, the injury history, and his durability, and all those 3 literally almost came true in that first round. And then we'd be talking about Moicano right now, but it didn't happen. And then I thought pretty severely outclassed him in the second and third. So I thought overall it was a good enough fight for the card, still entertaining at points, but that's about how I saw. So I was happy with the result. I don't know, that does just make me feel bad more for the Dariush, a dark horse narrative, back a couple of years ago, but I still think it shows you he could still beat some of the maybe 5 to 15 guys, but he can't compete necessarily when it comes to an Armin or an Oliveira, but he can
Yeah,
still be competitive.
completely agreed. And you look at his last two losses, whether they were over 18 months ago. Sure enough, Armin and Oliveira. It's like he's so good up until that peak. And this just questions that whole new generation of lightweights. The way Moicano was destroyed after he beat the hell out of BSD. Maybe these guys who we were thinking aren't nearly as good as we thought. Maybe we got ahead of ourselves with the Joel Alvarez is coming up now, and the Fluffy Hernandez is coming up. Or not Fluffy Hernandez, Mauricio Ruffy.
I was like, you just picked two of the
I was going to
fighters
say,
that
that's
like,
a low
I hope
ball.
not. Yeah, I was like, I hope they're really good.
But no, those two guys might actually prove to be better because this was a terrible performance from Moicano. We got his first. I did have him winning the first round, partially because of that knockout. But after that, he just looked gassed. He looked exhausted. As soon as Dariush got him on the ground, he showed no signs of getting back up. And fair play to Dariush. He looked. We talked about. I mean, we're going to bring this up multiple times. What we talked about on last week's episode, but last week we talked about if Dariush comes out quick, comes out aggressive, and shows the style that we know he can, but we're all questioning because of that age and because of that time off. He proved us completely wrong as far as he came out and looked quick. He looked quick. He looked quick to get to the takedowns. And once he was on the ground, there was no chance that Moicano was getting back up. And if he did, another takedown. That's why he had, I think, he went 5 for 5 on takedowns, and I think they were all in the second and third round. Pure grappling domination by Dariush. And again, I don't know what to expect next from him, just considering what Anthony you just mentioned as far as he's not good enough for these top guys, but he's too good for the guys below him.
Yeah, I don't even know what they're gonna do with Dariush, and it's kind of a tough one because he's really good, but so many lightweights hit hard.
Yeah.
I think Dariush could be really competitive with some of these guys until he gets hit clean on the chin, and then he's bye Benny. It gets really tough. But I'm kind of upset with myself because I do not think Moicano is that good. I picked Renato to beat him. I picked Benoit Saint Denis to beat him, and I'm like, this guy just gets hit out there. His grappling's not that good. And then I had him because I thought Dariush is there to be hit, and he just descended, he goes to sleep if you hit him hard enough. I don't think Moicano was aggressive enough early. I think that was kind of my takeaway. Is he stung him about 4 minutes in, and he's trying to take his back. It's like, dude, what are you doing? Throw punches. Why are we trying to chase to his back? And he couldn't get the takedown, couldn't get to the back. And then in round 2, he's trying to defend takedowns, and he's running to the back trying to take the back. I'm like, dude, you were grappling him while he was concussed 2 minutes ago, and you couldn't get to the back. And now we're going to get to the back after he had 3 minutes to recover? What sense does that make? That's dumb as hell. That makes no sense at all. You had him, he didn't know where he was, and you couldn't out-grapple him. Now we're trying to grapple him and not hit him on the chin that you just almost knocked out. Completely, just absolutely dumb as shit. And so one of the reasons I don't like Moicano, but hey, that's Islam's title defense that got him to number 4 and helped him break the record for most title defenses in the division. Surely he couldn't have stuck around and tried to improve that run, but what the fuck do I know? It's Renato Moicano, so money Moicano, great title defense for Islam, and we move on. And you know who he never fought, even though he tried to fight him 4 times? Beneil Dariush. Beneil Dariush was the one guy being like, he won't out-grapple me. And you know what? Maybe he wouldn't have out-grappled him. Might have knocked him out. But, I'm just saying. Maybe Beneil Dariush just goes out there, defends a couple takedowns, and things get wicked. I'm not saying it's impossible after what I just watched him do now that he's old and kind of washed. So, I'm just throwing that out there because I would have liked to see that fight in hindsight. All right. I found a way to sneak in some Islam hate. I honestly don't hate Islam, but some of these things just really annoy me. We'll move down. Payton Talbott versus Felipe Lima. Great performance from Payton Talbott. Anthony, you are the resident Payton Talbott supporter. I think the most out of the three of us. So go ahead and take it away on this one.
Yeah, I think this is the one where I didn't want to be too biased on someone that I really liked, and I thought it was a tough matchup. So I think I picked Lima, even, and it was because I know we talked about it in the episode last week, the wrestling advantage. I had said that, Talbot obviously got outworked, a little bit manhandled against Barcelos, but I said when I watched that fight back, I saw someone that was still working all 3 rounds. He was still showing some good things, some good reversals. I think he just didn't. My one issue is he didn't show enough. I'm blanking on the word, but enough. He should have been more ready to get back up quicker and everything. He was showing no urgency on the ground to get back up quicker, and that was one of my main problems. And then coming into this one against a younger prospect, also a good grappler, I didn't know if there's going to be enough time between fights to really show the full, the full focus on how much his wrestling could improve. That was, I thought, pretty much, went out the door when that fight started. I think the first time he gets taken down, he immediately starts working to get back up. And I was like, thank you. That was like one of the big reasons in that first fight. Already next fight, he's completely focused on getting up with a sense of urgency, which I think also goes to the fact that I believe he's a high IQ fighter and someone that will continue to get better in all aspects, not just the striking and stuff. So I thought it was a great performance in the wrestling department and the takedown defense. Obviously, his striking looked crisp like it does in some of his other fights at times. He was working some of the hands, and I think what a bounce back too from such a young fighter with I think 4th fight in the UFC or something maybe. But I thought it was he kind of knocked it out of the park on a bounce back, which we talk about from times to times how fighters will respond, and then specifically when it comes to a younger fighter.
Yeah, I mean, hell of a recovery, because I think he got kind of walked in that first round. Sure, he was getting up and down, but he was continuously seemed to be on his back in the first round, and he was getting outstruck a little bit by Lima. But after that, it was just Payton Talbott doing what we know Payton Talbott can do. He looked good on the feet. He looked great defending the takedowns. There's a reason Lima went 3 for 15 in the entire fight on takedown attempts. It's because of how much Talbott has improved since that last fight. Didn't think it was possible, but he did a damn good job, and good win, because we talked about this. I was like, oh, this is a good prospect versus prospect matchup. If you lose, it's like, okay, got to go back to the drawing board. If you win, it's like, okay, now you can make that next step up. Talbott can now make that next step up. And I think it was huge for him to be on that opening the main card. We saw him on some main card stuff before. I don't know. I'm pretty sure he's on some pay-per-view main cards, wasn't he? At some point.
I think the Barcelos fight was a pay-per-view.
Which, yeah, that's a hard one for him. Like, that's the one where you get ragdolled around for 15 minutes and you come back against another guy similar style and you put on that good of an exhibition just to show how good you actually are and how much you can improve. And I think, to me, that's the biggest thing for Payton Talbott is we knew what his weaknesses were. He knew what his weaknesses were. And it's night and day between that Barcelos fight and this one. I'm very, very curious to see what he improves in and how he improves next time out, because I'm sure everyone still has flaws in their game, and he'll probably recognize and be like, okay, I could do this better, watching back fight film, and be like, all right, let's improve this. Let's start working on takedown attempts, not just takedown defense. We still have our stand-up game strong. He has the potential to improve very, very quickly, and that's the biggest thing for me. Also, don't know. I mean, there's all the jokes about him and Frank Ocean. We should have known better than to pick against Payton Talbott in Pride Month.
He's undefeated in Pride Month.
Yep.
I
won't be commenting on that relationship.
No, not either, but there's memes about it. So,
Frank posted it.
He did. Frank did post if you wanted evidence, he gave you some more. I'll just say that If anyone wanted evidence, it's there. Um, okay, I was really impressed with the improvements he made. The main reason I picked against him is we just saw what his grappling looked like in the last time out, and I was like, well, I don't think he doesn't really have enough time to make the necessary improvements. That was my main point with Talbott, and he made the necessary improvements, which is really impressive because he didn't have the time, like I just said. So that rate of improvement was really impressive, and he spoke about it on Helwani's show, and he was like, yeah, well, it was pretty concerning for me because if this was like a real life scenario, I would have died. And I was like, he was like, I took that very seriously. And I was like, what a way to find motivation because it clearly worked. So that's how we're going to find motivation. Hats off to you for taking it that serious and making that many improvements. The other thing I'll say on Talbott, great cardio as well. An attempted takedowns isn't easy. Certainly makes you tired. So for him, long term, like if he can defend and survive a handful and make these guys work, once he gets to the second and third, and if he gets to those fourth and fifths eventually down the road, that's where like his takedown defense will look even better than it really is, just because how grueling it is trying to land those early round takedowns. And if he can make guys work, which is why you don't want to lay on your back. If you're spending too much time on the back, now all that effort that was just put in to land the takedown, you're not really taxing that guy because he gets to lay on top of you and recover. It's way more taxing when you get up and he's trying to hold you down when you get up, and you get up and start hitting him in the body, and now he's thinking, shit, I got to attempt another takedown. You go through that again, and it's just a cycle. Some guys get tired doing that, but for a guy like Talbott with great cardio, put guys in that cycle, especially offensive wrestlers. Otherwise, if he's left to strike with guys, like, not saying he's the best striker on the planet and he wins every single one, but like, I'd like my odds, especially at this stage in his career. I wouldn't find. I don't think there are many unranked guys that I'd be picking to beat Talbott in pure 15 minutes of striking. So I think he's at a really good position in his career, and I am massively impressed with the amount of improvements that he was able to make over. I think it was less than 6 months. I think his last fight was in January, so that is massively impressive to me.
I do. The two things I want to pick up on was I did see that interview too, and some of the other interviews he was doing leading up to fight week. I did really like the mentality aspect too from that, like you said. And I know he was like, maybe I was getting a little too cute with things and having all these hobbies and doing everything, and I really did kind of need to focus more up on the fighting aspect, and that's what I like is with his fight IQ and just everything in general. And then to Jerry's point too, that we saw a good enough improvement in the wrestling department, and I think he will continue improving. Like Jerry said, if he can for sure stamp his takedown defense as being really good, and that can carry over as he faces tougher opponents. Once he starts offensive wrestling, if he can at all, I'm not saying he has to be an elite at it, but that's the other thing. I think he's capable of some offensive wrestling, and I think that will only make his striking that much more difficult to face off against, and it'll make it that much better, which is the other things why I'm excited, why I think he still has that bright future as well.
Yeah, and I mean, he's only 26, so he has all the time in the world till he's even in his prime. If he can grow the way we saw him grow this from fight to fight this time, who knows what he'll be looking like by the time he's 28, 29, 30. Could be a very dangerous fighter.
I agree. All right, let's end it off with some final thoughts here. Jerry, it's your turn to lead us off. Final thoughts. What stood out to you from the prelims of UFC 317?
I mean, there's a lot, but I'm sure we're going to cover virtually every fight on the rest of this card. So I'm going to start with the fact that Nico Price made it to a second round.
Impressive. I thought he was going to die in the first, so good on him.
And he made it to the second round, so fair play to him. Jacob Smith looked good, but you are fighting Nico Price. You are the biggest betting favorite in UFC history. Not overly surprising. Just wanted to say kind of fair play Nico Price. You should have been retired a few fights ago, but hey, you still somehow survive a bit. And then I'll just touch on the because that was a finish. I'll touch on the Tracy Cortez one because she looked good. She came out and looked a lot better than she has in some of her recent fights. Active, both grappling, striking. She looked good and took advantage of Viviana Arahu, who kind of looked confused throughout the early part of that fight.
I'll add on to the Tracy Cortez. Me and the fellas were sitting on Tracy round 3 sub at plus 5,000. Oh, thought we had it. Thought we had it. The read was there, but it didn't come across the finish line.
I'll keep it short because there's not too much on there for prelims too. But I just thought, shout out Terrence McKinney. Terrence McKinney doesn't like seeing the second rounds, and that's either he wins or he loses. He doesn't care if he gets knocked out or gets the finish, but I guess he truly just doesn't like second rounds because what a crazy insta submission that I feel like you don't see from him too often. And Borshev fighting for his life, even tried riding the bike too, but couldn't get out of there. But I always like to see that. I don't know what you call it, submission defense, technically. More of a way to keep yourself awake. But the other thing, I will say, I mean, I was rooting for Hyder. I'll let James maybe pick that one up more too. That was another quick one. And then Jack Hermanson, thought he was winning. I was liking what I was seeing. I took his over in strikes, and that was I was like a 5-6 pick in props, so I needed his over in strikes. That would have been for 200. Looking good. Like 40 seconds left in the first round. He was up. He had 38. I think he needed 50 something. And then Gregory Rodriguez absolutely put him to the shadow realm, unfortunately. Also, maybe threw another punch in there that he didn't need to. Scum of the earth move right there, but
super necessary.
Yeah, extremely. But overall, yeah, I thought Hermanson was looking good, and that was his path to victory. But that was the big red button that Rodriguez had, and it was going to be live, especially in the early rounds. And boom, lands it at the end of the first. So great win for him. Kind of wiping away the loss to Cannonier against similar competition right here in Hermanson, and boom, gets the big win against a ranked guy next fight. So
yeah, a lot of impressive stuff. Agree with the Rodriguez and McKinney. I always find it funny when McKinney knows he can out-grapple somebody because he does it and then immediately submits them. There is no like, oh, he's going to grapple this. There's no like in between. It's like he's either going to have so much grappling success that he submits you, or like we're just going to bang it out. It's one of the two.
And then he tends to lose those. So I think he should like maybe focus on this other part of your game more.
Yeah. Good wrestler. You brought it up, Jose Delgado versus Hyder Emil. Really good, not even really performance, really good shot from Jose Delgado. You know, Emil, big hook guy, dips the head a little, grab that head and throw the knee up the middle. Great game planning there from Delgado, and it paid off. And then Rodriguez, we didn't need to throw in that last shot. Like, I get it, some people don't really care, but when you're walking up to a guy, looking down at his lifeless body and then throwing a punch, it's kind of like, come on. I get it if you're like in the moment and like jumping and like there's some, like I give a lot of leeway there, but slowly walking up, looking to see him clearly unconscious and then landing another one is when I'm like, all right, I've got the line's pretty deep for me, and you still found a way to cross it. Like I'd
agree. That's how I feel too. Also, don't tell me that was Herb, right? That wasn't.
Yeah,
it was Herb.
This dude's a maniac. He's actually a coach of the sport.
Yeah, he did not get over there nearly quick enough.
Yeah. Herb has some fault on his hands as well, but that doesn't mean you have to throw the shot if you're RoboCop.
Yeah, it was probably like 2 seconds from when he hit him the first time. Dude was on his back, slow walk, look, and then just hammer fist from hell. I was glad to hear that Jack was out of the hospital that night and was in good condition, but
yeah,
that's a life-threatening shot.
Yeah. Right? For example, pretty deep line. Like, I'm not mad at Ilia for the shots he landed on Charles. Like, clip him, stand immediately over him, bing, bing. That's not like walk up, look down, wind up. Like, there was a lot of thought, room for thought in there. I think that makes it a little bit. Not as. I don't know if dirty is the right word, but like, you didn't have to.
We've also seen Charles get rocked from time and time again and just completely recover. So you kind of have to make sure he's out. Jack Hermanson's 37. He hasn't won a fight in years. He definitely has, but like, you don't need to do that to an old man like that.
Yeah, he's not really the boot and rally guy too. Normally, when he gets dropped or clipped, he's over. Yeah.
Like, He'll take that Anthony Smith position up against the fence, put the hands up, and take his loss and go home. Like, that is true. Last fight on the card that we haven't touched on: Janata Deniz and Alvin Hines. Excuse me. Come to find out, Alvin Hines, toughest guy in the sport. Who, that's obviously a little bit of hyperbole, but like he was getting beat up pretty good, and Janata Deniz got pretty tired from hitting him in the face, which speaks a lot to a guy's toughness. Might not be what we want to know you for, but I'll at least tip my cap and tell you that you're tough when you go out there and have the performance he did. So
yeah, you did say,
especially at heavyweight.
Yeah, you did say it was going to be an entertaining fight last week, James. Because like you said, what was it? Hines is just one of those guys who just does not look like a heavyweight. He looks like your overweight, stereotypical heavyweight, where he can't move well, and hey, he's got a chin on him. That's for sure.
Yeah, he does. All right. That'll wrap up UFC 317. Hit every fight on the card. Do have some articles up at vendettasportsmedia.com. Some recap type stuff. I believe there are 4 up there. No card this upcoming weekend. So not to say there won't be more UFC posts going up. There's definitely posts from other sports, obviously. And we'll be back next week. Don't know what we're going to talk about next week, considering the state of that UFC. I believe it's Nashville card.
Yes, it is.
Oh boy, we have a heavyweight main event. So,
cool. Yes, it's a thriller of a main event.
Yeah, we'll see what strings we can pull, and maybe I'll break some news and do everyone the favor of spicing up the week.
Well, we've been saving some news for a rainy day. It might be
true.
That is true. We haven't pulled the John Jones retirement card, so that's probably gonna have to pull that one next week. So we'll do that next week. And thank you, obviously, for everyone tuning in. Apologies once again on the preview getting scrapped, but thank you for tuning in this week for the recap. We really appreciate it, and make sure to come back next week, even though the card sucks. Still come back and listen to the show next week. Thank you.